An amazing video, Animation vs. Math, was made by the team of Alan Becker. Maybe someone remembers at the end of the 2000s, videos were circulating on the network in which a 2D man comes out of a computer canvas and starts to brawl, fighting with his own creator. These works were just made by the young Alan Becker. Now he has a prosperous channel and whole staff of assistants. There are more characters, but the animation technique has remained almost the same. Is that the good old Macromedia Flash most likely changed to Adobe Animate and After Effects. And now, to the delight of all of us, a new story on the Alan Becker's channel is completely based on mathematics. It happened because one of the team members, the lead animator, is crazy about math. Watch the original video if you haven't already. The link will be in the description. And only then we can discuss what ideas and facts underlied. Here we'll share for the most part my opinion, so interpretations may be wrong. And of course, sorry for the bad English. In the first frames, we see a character usually named the Second Coming, who seems to have lost his memory, or maybe he ended up in the world of numbers as a result of the crash. Therefore, our hero will have to rediscover all mathematics. And the concept of the number is of course a colossal step. To realize that one mammoth and one bison have some common abstract characteristic is one of the most important breakthroughs in the history of mankind. And then the addition of natural numbers naturally follows. In part, there is a hint at the decimal number system associated with anatomical reasons, although in some ancient civilizations, for the same reasons, a duodecimal counting system prevailed. An interesting transition with the deuce. Indeed, counting by ones is much easier than adding large numbers. And here's a surprise, but the last two digits of the result again turned out to be bagels. Subtraction at one time appeared naturally, long before the terms debit and credit. But at this moment it is appropriate to give a bright flash or explosion. An illumination occurs under the angelic singing. The discovery of zero by humanity is an incredible discovery, a fundamentally new stage in the evolution. Zero is followed by negative numbers. And then, abruptly, we see a guest from the future, the Euler number in a purely imaginary degree. This is the second character of the film, whom I will call just E. In essence, to understand the whole product, it will be enough to refresh the memory of Euler's formula, but with the derivation through the Taylor series. If you remember, e to the power of I pi is equal to -1, that is to say, real number. Accordingly, when multiplied by an imaginary unit, we get exactly -I, and this Barry lives in a completely different field than TSC. So, opening the door to a new dimension, she calmly leaves a field of real numbers, or even for now, just a group of integers with an addition operation. Here we see annoyance, which turns into a desire to catch the E. Remembering -1, TSC begins experiments. Multiplication of both parts of the identity by -1 with a sign change. This is a pure algebra. And then multiplication. And then the inverse operation, division, which leads to the problems and perhaps one of the first approaches to the mathematical analysis, the concept of infinity. After all, as you remember, you cannot divide by zero. From multiplication we move on to powers. Historically, such simple identities in the Renaissance could take half a page of text. Every weight was about geometry, cubes and squares. Examples and signs of operations were written in words. Here is another interesting point related to the dimension: length, area, volume, hypervolume. On the basis of expounding rules comes the understanding of the zero degree and even -1. At one time, there was a transition from addition to the inverse operation, subtraction, from multiplication to division, and now we see the inverse operation to the squaring. Further, the discovery that turned the view of the Pythagoreans above the universe. The square root of 2 is not a rational number. The next step is to expand the field of real numbers. I hope I will not offend anyone if I say that this entry is not entirely accurate, since it entails a contradiction. What do you think? Now the frame introduces operations for complex numbers: addition, multiplication. The product of two imaginary units gives an integer -1, the same one that e to the power of I pi is. Multiplication by I opens the veil in front of the e. She still has a multiplier I, then she loses it. To open the portal, the I multiplier is taken out again, but the TSC sphere does not offset it, because I multiplied by I is equal to -1. Moving further, remember that the complex exponent is representable in terms of the sum of sine and cosine. Multiplying by -1 in the complex plane is like symmetry across the origin. At this point, minus pi appears in the exponent, but perhaps the parentheses were meant, because we see the result e to the 0 power. The feeling that we are talking about another movement of the plane. When multiplying a real number by -1, we are essentially rotating it 180 degrees around the origin, as you can see in the animation. Increases running speed. Next is a fight where arithmetic operations affect numbers. Note that the TSC's bow is made up of two 2's and a multiplication sign, so the arrows come out as a 4. When the 4 appears in the denominator in trigonometric form, it turns out cosine pi over 4 plus I sine pi over 4. That's why E moved along the arc of the 45 degrees on the complex plane. This is where I multiplies. And in the complex plane, that means a 90-degree rotation around the origin. TSC has lost track and begins to reason in a calm environment. The point from I draws the imaginary axis, then the real axis, and finally the unit circle on the complex plane, the radian measure of an angle. The length of this sword is equal to the radius of the circle, that is 1. At this point, as in a polar plane, each point can be defined by radius, that is the distance to the origin, and the angle theta, which forms a radius with the positive direction of the x-axis. The circle changes its radius to 1. In this case, the angle theta exactly defines the point of the circle. In particular, the number pi is marked on the left. The hero rejoices because he was able to build this transcendent object. But the ultimate goal is to comprehend and catch e to the I pi. By definition, this sign is the ordinate of a point on a trigonometric circle. In turn, the cosine sets the abscissa. Do not lose sight of the fact that the complex exponent is just obtained by sine and cosine, but you need an imaginary unit. The hero multiplies the sign on it. But do you remember that this multiplication geometrically means a rotation of 90 degrees around the origin? And now, by combining these two functions, we get e to the I pi, followed by fight choreography. Now recall the Taylor series of the exponent. It is also relevant for the complex argument, which is what happened now. Such a series converges to the exponential in the case of an infinite number of terms. And on a freeze frame, single terms of the series are clearly visible, which are calculated explicitly upon impact. TSC escaping from the chase, he is armed with a number pi. With its help, he built a shield in the form of circle, and by multiplying by 8, implying a new dimension, he gets the volume of the cylinder. E changes the radius of the circle, catches TSC, who holds a minus sign in his hand. But then again, what does multiplying a real number by -1 mean? This is the point reflection, the symmetry across the origin. That's why TSC appears on the right. Further familiar ideas. But here, on the contrary, the sine and cosine are expressed through the exponent. In fact, this is all the same Euler's formula. It's just the way to clone e to the power of I pi itself. The protagonist, in response, constructs a tangent that acts like an operator. You can see traces of shots that resemble a tangent plot. Perhaps it means that the e becomes an argument of the function and the tangent is equal to 0. That is, tc multiplies everyone by 0. If you understand this point differently, let me know. Further battles and already familiar ideas. Here in this place the addition of 7i appears, but this obviously is a vertical shift by 7 units to up. With the infinity shot, the hero multiplies the dimension of the Euclidean space. Perhaps this is what helps him get out of the vicious circle. Next comes the passage to the limit, and the sum of the series turns into a definite improper integral. What follows is a funny scene. The definite integral sweeps out the area. At some point, the E opens a portal to the complex world, and the main character teleports along with it. E now represents the real number -1, and perhaps this is why she is losing consciousness. Everywhere we see complex number roots. TC grabs the E, multiplies by I, and opens a portal. Next comes the reconciliation. Now I suppose the main character is wondering how to get out of this world. At this moment, the word exit is guessed. Apparently, the portal will not work for these purposes, maybe because TC have 4 limbs and he will stay transferred to the real line. The E brings a circle. Further, there is a well-known connection between the gamma function and the factorial. Due to this, the denominator of the fraction is converted. Now we need to remember how the volume of n-dimensional bolt of unit radius is found. You may notice the same expression in the original frame. That's why the E, figuratively speaking, increases the dimension of space. The point turns into a circle, then into a 3-dimensional ball, and then into a multi-dimensional ball. TC is a subset of this ball. By multiplying the degree by an imaginary unit, teleportation occurs. And at the end, we see friends of the E. This is the Riemann zeta function, the number phi which denotes the golden ratio, and the delta, often used when working with infinitesimals. You might have missed one more friend on your first viewing. In this freeze frame, the leg of the gray cardinal is visible. The whole company goes beyond the horizon against the backdrop of sunset. And that mysterious giant turns out to be aleph. This represents the cardinality or size of infinite sets that can be well ordered. It was introduced by Georg Cantor. Corrections, additions and questions will be waiting in the comments from you. Think critically, do math, take care.